Yeah, I always do the hi, yay! I have on the amazing Charlie Ray, and we met at the Women Picket DC event, and I listened to her talk, and we talked multiple times, and I was like, I want her on for sure. So, Charlie, you can just honestly launch into your journey. Let's hear it. Have at
Yeah,
it.
sure. Yeah. Well, I just want to say I loved meeting you in DC, and that's why I'm here, just to, like chat with you. Um, I guess my journey started, especially with activism, feminism and stuff. It started like 10 years ago. I was pretty young. I'm 30 now, so I think I was about 20. It was a little earlier than that. Um, but yeah, it started because I think it was just because the kids around me were kind of getting activated and figuring out the world that we live in and grew up in and stuff like that. And that's really where it started, was at like just a basic place of like, what's happening, especially with
Uh-huh.
school. Like, I remember when we were really young, we used to do sign petitions and stuff so that we could have, more clothes to wear in our uniforms and stuff like that.
Oh,
So,
did you guys have a uniform school? What state was
yeah.
this, or where was this?
So I grew up in Connecticut originally. I went to Two Rivers Magnet Middle School.
Mm.
There were so many good things about it. Like, it was a technology school, but yeah, we had like strict uniforms. We used to do petitions for stuff like that.
What's
And
technology
that's
school mean?
so we had everyone had a laptop and we had smart boards in every room and we would go out.
Smartboards.
Oh, so they're like the projector screens that you can write on the
I thought so.
projection. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Hmm.
So that was
Interesting.
fun.
Yeah.
We used to go out every Thursday to do like science experiments outside and stuff like that. So it was really
That's
like
cool.
technology integrated. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Wow. And that was high school, you said?
So that was middle school.
Oh, middle school. Good Lord. Did you have to
Yeah.
be like accepted into that school, or is that like just the school that was around?
Yeah, it was a lottery. It was actually, my
Oh.
sister was interested in it because my sister was kind of the book nerd and I was kind of the artsy kid.
Mm-hmm.
So because she was accepted into it, I ended up getting accepted into it, but it ended up
Oh,
being a
interesting.
great thing. Yeah.
Yeah. That sounds really cool.
Yeah.
So what about all the petition stuff and whatnot, and how you get? I'm in my 30s, and I got more involved, and I guess now hilariously politics, being active just about this transgender crap. But previously I was just never into that stuff. Not that I'm like against it, but I always thought like protesting is like angry people that can't change the world, which sounds terrible. Or just it felt like people just crazy, which is so stupid. I can't believe how many judgments I have about like real life shit, people fighting about real stuff. It's just nuts. I don't know. I think it's because I grew up in the South and what my parents said about shit, but enough about me. It's just I'm interested, or it's intriguing that you got interested in all this like younger, in your 20s versus me in my 30s.
Yeah,
Tell your boyfriend to
definitely.
shh.
That's my cats. They're chasing
Oh,
each
are
other
you serious?
around.
I love that I assumed it's him. Never mind. Sorry. Oh, I'll edit that out. No, I won't. Okay. Sorry. Go ahead. My
No,
bad.
it's okay. Yeah, but I think I agree. There's some taboo around protesting and being socially active. Yeah, we started when we were young, but I definitely always understood that there was a taboo around protesting. And we actually started skipping school to go to protest when I was in high school.
Oh, wow.
So I just kind of got involved early, but I definitely see it from an outside perspective. So
Hmm.
actually, what I was going to say was I'm actually not a feminist anymore, in the sense that um, it became increasingly difficult over time to have any political allegiance
Mm.
because I was becoming an independent journalist. And so it was almost for the sake of defining who I was that I ended up like formally separating from radical feminism and feminism in general, because my path was really as an individual to write about journalism. And I was seeing that there was what people might call purity culture, or
Hmm.
like purity politics, where if you make certain decisions, then it's like comes into question whether or not you're a feminist,
Oh, Lord.
because of
Purity
decisions that
culture?
you make. I don't know. Yeah, I don't
Can
know.
you define that? I've sort of heard of it. What is
Yeah,
it?
yeah. So it just depends on like how feminist you are.
Hmm.
So for example, like um, I guess wearing makeup or dressing up in the feminine
Ah.
role is like you're not a people will say you're not a feminist if you, but that's just like one example.
Yeah.
It expands to all different beliefs on like controversial issues, all the like political issues of the day.
Hmm. Yeah, I
Yeah.
gotcha.
And so just my path really led to independent journalism. And I've worked with many organizations over the years as like art director. I've been hired as an like official photographer for different campaigns. I worked as a writing lead for this past Women Picket DC. I've worked with a lot of different organizations, but I just try to retain my independence as a journalist, I
It's
guess.
so honestly a wise idea. Yeah, I hate. I don't. It's funny. The '90s was this. Don't label me. I'm not a fan of being like I'm a radical feminist. I'm not against it. Like I know what it means. I guess. Actually, I don't know what the fuck it is. I mean, I do, but like, are there rules? I don't think there's rules. I definitely do not agree with the oh you're wearing makeup or oh you think this oh you use the word demon. Someone the other day tried to say the word demon is a white patriarchal term, and I was like and block. I don't know. I just don't have that. And like and that's okay if they think that. I'm not here to police their opinion on that. Like I'm not okay. But I'm like,
Yeah,
well, it's not how I see it. And like I think I see what
right.
they're saying, but I'm like, that's just not me. And
Yeah.
um
And
yeah.
there's so many cultural nuances. Like once in a feminist group, people got really upset with me for saying lady. But then I realized that the feminist group is British. So it's like lady
Oh.
is like a different term
Oh.
there,
Yeah.
whereas like it wouldn't
Interesting.
be as considered as misogynistic in the United States. So it's
I've
like,
seen yeah. I've seen someone say that in a Facebook group. It wasn't the word girl, and I think it might have been. I think it was that as well. And I don't remember what word it was, but I was like, what? I was like, I don't. But that's interesting. Yeah, I guess I didn't think about the cultural different country thing, and that's a really good point.
yeah.
Yep, 100%.
And I do
Yes.
think it's really important to get into the nuances, but I think people can easily become dogmatic and lose a sense of objectivity and logic, I guess.
Yeah, it's really not the focus. I mean, that's going to distract you immensely from, I would think, the core issue, what you initially started fighting for. It just sounds like a huge distraction. It sounds like someone's putting the focus on other people, like judgments. I can't stand judgments. I'm like, no one's perfect, and I've seen this occasionally. I feel like I see it more online, honestly, because of course people get more judgy and honest online where I'm like, oh, I feel like people are judging other women for not being the perfect feminist, and I'm like, I'm so over that shit. Everyone, you don't know where these people are in their journey. I am a baby radful. I don't even like that term. I don't like saying that. I'm just new in this journey of
Hmm.
finding my femaleness. I don't even like. Well, I was gonna say I don't like using the word woman because they're trying to use that word, but fuck that. No, I am a woman. Damn it. Um, so I just yeah, I don't like judging, and I wish people wouldn't judge, but whatever. Anyhow, get on with
Yeah.
your thing.
And
The hell's
I
happening?
wish we just had better parameters for judgment. Like, I think that judgment is necessary in society to decide, what's good and what's bad, what's helpful and what's hurtful. But, like, yeah, when you cross over into dogma and are no longer able to process why something's good or bad, or, yeah, even trying to understand, like I just said, simple cultural differences where it's
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, this person's motivation isn't to be misogynistic, they just come from a different culture, and being able to communicate those things and finding the balance between those things, because there is nuance to this discussion and everything is kind of very specific. But then on the other hand, yeah, just like attacking people for a word choice that they might not have even thought deeply about seems counterproductive.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's awesome all the work you've gotten done, and it sounds like you felt respected in these roles. That as soon as anyone feels respect, they take their job more serious. Because I've seen how you work, and it's awesome. You're efficient and ready to rock, and your writing is great, and you're just I don't know. You're one of those people that has that fire and seriousness in what they're doing, which is great to see because it really does shatter my own, like I said, judgment about being an advocate or picketing or protesting and speaking out against stuff because it's a passion. It's not like someone being whiny. I love
Right,
seeing your
right.
work.
And that taboo of
Mm.
like that, when people do stand up, it seems like they're disrupting society or going against society or sort of being
Okay,
needlessly
Karen. Like,
demanding. Yeah. Yeah.
enough of that shit. Okay, I figured out what
Yeah.
Karens are. Karens is just women that stand up for shit. Like, and then the guess who are saying it? Men being like, okay, Karen. Like, oh, it's obnoxious. And even I fell into that saying that word. But then I was like, this is dumb. It's just women being like, I don't think so. And men are
Mhm.
usually the ones that don't like confrontation. So of course they would be like, they're no fun or whatever. It's just dumb. I figured that out quite fast. But
Yeah.
anyway.
And that's the nuance now of being able to
Hmm.
really listen to a situation, really listen to what people's motivations are, people's fears or people's upsetness. And
How did you get
there's
to
so
that
many,
place? Were you always that receptive or intuitive? Like, is this something you
I
grew
don't think I
into?
was.
Mm,
Yeah, no, I think that like, especially there's something in youth, I think that like the younger activists are going through it now where there's a sense of like urgency and there's a sense of like we need to make intense demands. And I think that's where it comes from, that it's like as soon as someone disagrees, they're shunned or they're called a Nazi or a bigot because, and I think it does come from a good place. I think it
mm,
comes from a almost a self-righteous place of like I need to stand up
yeah.
for people and I need to do it now. I need to do it intensely. But when you're in that mode of thought a lot, you become less discerning of when it's needed. And so I do think that that kind of energy is needed in some contexts, but being able to, yeah, discern and measure when it's needed and when it's not needed and like what's going to be the most productive and what your goal is. And maybe it's just because I got started so early that I took such a long journey in activism that I saw these things over and over again, people
Yep.
turning on each other,
Yeah.
not being effective, not organizing well, so it does come from experience being able to see a mature way of going about it, and I think
Mhm.
people look down on that a lot, especially like if they want to call themselves a radical because they want to be in the fight, they want to be, tough and making the demands that they think are needed, and you can get lost in that really
Hmm.
quickly, I think.
Absolutely. You have blinders
Yeah.
on.
Yes.
And I understand the, passion and we have to do something now. And I really do think it's people are seeing it like the new gay rights thing where it's like, whatever rights. It's crazy. I get why people have fallen into this. Like, I get it. Like, if you believe someone's born in the wrong body, of course you'd be like, this is, you're a whatever. Actually, I don't understand the whole name calling. The youth thing. It's 100% rebelling. It's just a high rebellious state of mind, and it's really unfortunate because I won't even engage in like if they have an anime avatar. I don't know. I can just tell that they're young, and I'm like I feel wrong even combating you like online because I'm like you don't know. You're really misled. I don't even engage.
Right. And they're children. And that's one thing
Yeah.
that I've said. I've gotten brought into conferences before to talk about, especially transgender activists, and that's kind of the nuance that I'm talking about. We want to hate them, right? There's this idea of like, oh, they're taking away our rights, they're attacking our structures of society, and we want to hate them. But it's like, these are mostly misguided children.
Yeah.
And
I'd say it all. Yeah.
exactly. And one of the things I've talked about too before is that the thing that children psychologically are hardwired to do
Mm.
because of our cognitive abilities is to find an identity. And that's why they're picking this up. It's this complex language of being able to figure out an identity. And so I don't even think it's helpful at the end of the day to paint people who believe in transgenderism as hateful. I don't, because I think it's mostly misguided children who want to find their identity, who want to define themselves,
Yeah.
they want a complex textured language to be able to define
Yeah,
themselves.
where you feel special. Who doesn't want to feel
Mm-hmm.
special? And not only feel special, but you're immediately recognized for your specialness. Are you kidding me? Like, I get
Yeah.
why a child, or not even a child, anyone would latch onto this real fast. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's given, I've said this, the awkward people, the nerds, the people that aren't listened to. Spectrum, whatever you want to say,
Yeah.
someone who are made fun of. It gives them ultimate power where nobody can touch them. Who the hell would not want that? Everyone
Exactly.
wants that. Everyone wants power, which is ultimately destructive, but like it's so mind fucky because
Yeah.
I'm like, I get it. Like, I get it. I fully get it. I've always loved being an individual and different and standing out. I know I would have fallen into this like real fast, like, it's crazy. It's
Mm-hmm.
so twisted. It's so frustrating because it's like, first of all, I just don't. How the hell are you going to convince a young person that it's what they're doing is not what it seems? Like, a lot of young people just don't want to hear it, and people in general, I don't know, just I always feel like we're screwed because it's
Mm-hmm.
just the most
You know,
brilliant. Yeah, go
and
ahead.
that's the difficult thing too, is that, like you're saying, like I would have latched onto this. I was a tomboy, so I grew up thinking those same thoughts about wanting to be a boy or like kind of wanting to switch personalities. And I
How
think
old
the
were you
most
when that
sad
started?
part when I was, it was like from my earliest memories until middle school,
Hmm.
I I hung out with mostly boys and I was in taekwondo and stuff. So, and I cut my hair short. So I had all those thoughts of like, should I have been born in,
Hmm.
but it was mostly
Hmm.
before puberty, which as I understand from the literature, that's pretty much like after puberty, the majority of children will end up identifying as their sex.
Yeah,
But
desisting or just being like, never mind.
desisting.
Yeah.
Same thing happened to me.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's those nuances that we need to be able to hold with us because, so for example, if transgenderism wasn't eroding our social rights and if it wasn't medicalizing children, it would probably be like being a skater, or
Yeah.
be like being emo when we were in school,
Yeah.
where it's like you just wear funny, you just wear cool clothes or whatever you want, and
Yeah.
you kind of have this look to you, and you have a crowd, and then you grow out of it in like 4 years.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah,
Everyone goes through an awkward phase. Some sort of I was this. People. I hate mentioning Reddit, but here I am. I spent so many of my years on Reddit. I've already admitted that, but there's like it's called Blunder Years, where people post photos from their like middle school of like just funny looking stuff. Like, I can't believe I looked like this or wore
yeah.
this. It's like it happens to everyone, if I'm not mistaken, where people go, "Oh my
Yeah,
god, I can't believe I wore that. I can't believe I wore that
yeah,
lipstick or whatever." So I'm like, I hate to say it, but that whole "it's just a phase" thing. It's not a phase, mom. It really is. Like,
yeah.
what identity that youth has chosen, or one singular youth person that they've stuck with in their adulthood. Like, do we know? Like, is there anything? Like, you usually, I don't want to say, and I don't want to be insensitive of like, you're going to grow out of it, or that's not really you, because in the moment, it really is you, and that is your life. But there's nothing, people just shift and fluid. Oh,
Yeah.
God, their language is so, it's so perfectly, whoever did this shit is brilliant.
There are
God.
accuracies. There are accuracies, and that's the thing.
Yeah,
Like
true. Good
if
point.
any individual person wanted to understand transgenderism, all you have to do is study child psychology because
Hmm.
it's like this is just textbook like rebelling from your parents, creating your own identity, like rebelling against society. This is cyclical. It
Oh,
happens
yeah.
every generation. So
Hmm.
it's just such a normal thing, and that's the thing that's so important is like we just need to push out into society that like we can't make it, plastic surgery is really dangerous, for example. So
Chopping off
like
body
where
parts, making it cool and trendy. The
mhm,
fuck? That's insane.
wear
No.
what you want, but like when you
Yeah.
become it's not like emo kids are like chopping their arms off, like
And taking things that halt your natural body process.
yeah.
It's this whole thing. Yeah, it's funny that I would have no problem with it if it wasn't infringing on our fucking existence and our rights and our spaces, and also destroying bodies. You only
Mhm.
get one body. I'm okay with you. You're that. Or, okay, you're attack helicopter or earbud gender, whatever. Okay, pet. But as soon as you start destroying your one shell, your real self, your body, your carrying system of your mind, that is where I have a huge problem with it.
Right.
And big pharma they're sunking their teeth and their claws into it. God,
Mhm. Making so much money off of synthetic
my
hormones. It's
God, off label. All of it is
yeah.
off label.
Mhm. Yeah, it's scary.
Yes.
Without long-term studies, without like consent and like informed consent.
Yep.
Uh,
Oh,
yeah.
how did we get here?
Yeah, how did we get here? Yeah.
It's a
And I
great
think those
question.
those messages are so important to carry forward, and that's why I was saying like I really don't like the approach where we're just saying everyone's hateful that believes in this because it's just not true, and if we can impart that information of like not all of this is bad, like of course kids want to figure out their own identity. It's just a normal part of psychology, but like plastic
Yeah.
surgery is dangerous. That's the line,
Yeah. Plus, with the invention of the internet, and I keep saying this, like, God, I forgot his name. The guy who invented propaganda. Like, I don't know if it was the 20s or the 10s or whatever. they've had technically like over 100 years to perfect that. And that was some still sneaky propaganda stuff all about the torches of freedom. Go check out the deprogrammer on YouTube. She has amazing videos about the father of propaganda. Like if they started that back then and they've had this many years to perfect propaganda and with the access of the internet, like I believe we're being manipulated and
Oh,
whatever
for
without
sure.
us even knowing what techniques they're using. Because we know the techniques they use from maybe 15 years ago, but like what's happening right now that in 10 years we're going to go, oh my God, I didn't even know that was that.
Yeah.
Where's I going with that? Oh,
No, they have entire teams of people who are studying the effects of
yes.
advertisements.
Especially all the selling your data and whatnot for how many fucking years. Like when I first started using the internet, oh my God, I like signed up for all these free like sample and coupon websites because you get like free shit in the mail. I'm like, a free diaper? Sure, that's fucking weird. Don't need it, want it because it was free. But I would give my I don't know, I love I said diaper. Ugh, not that people, not that. Anyway, but like I gave like all my data like willingly, and that was when I was like in middle school. My God, I mean they have everything on me. So especially when you give a child access to the internet, Instagram, and all this stuff, they sign up for all this shit. You think they're reading the whatever it's called,
The
the
fine
privacy?
print of
Yeah,
everything. Yeah.
first of all, kids aren't going to read it. Half of the adults aren't reading it. Um, so with that, they are obviously able to twist. I mean, the whole social dilemma Netflix thing is
Hmm.
honestly
Oh,
going
it's
right in
pure
line with it.
anarchy. It's pure, and that's where transgenderism is a part of that. It's a free for all.
Yes, free, grab whatever you want.
Yeah,
But
be whoever you be, whatever, do whatever. It's truly you can be whatever you want time. Yeah.
it sounds good by nature, but I was listening to Gender Through a Wider Lens, Sasha Ayad and Stella O'Malley, and it's a wonderful podcast. What, I'm like name dropping everywhere. But I do a lot of research. Dang it. Anyway, they were talking, one of the recent podcasts, they were talking about how some, I think it was some anorexic or desisted woman was following this Instagram account that, or multiple Instagram accounts that were non binary people. And the non binary look of the people she was following was extremely emaciated. And she was perceptive enough to realize that that was affecting her image of her own body. So she was smart enough, this girl, to start following other accounts that were other bodies to like snap out of that. And that right
Yeah.
there was a great example of how social media, and apparently especially Instagram, which is the most destructive, some study, which I fully believe it, because it does that visual comparison thing where it's
Hmm.
Instagram is mostly images, honestly. Twitter's text a lot and some images, but it's impossible, I think it's impossible for humans not to compare themselves to what they see. And I think a lot of it is just subconscious as well, where you could be confident about your body, but if you're just fed that, if you followed that, a lot of those accounts, that would honestly, of course, it would mess your mind up because you're like, it's a human body. You connect with that because it's a human and you're a human. I think it honestly would easily seep into you and make you be like, oh, I'm too fat or whatever. I just thought that was terrifying and kind of stuff that I stepped back and rethought about, social media and how much it is influencing. I mean, all of like, I think twisting the fucking kids, Tumblr and TikTok, Reddit, all I mean, it's just really opened the gates for groomers to walk freely.
Yeah.
It's horrifying, and no one's putting a
Yeah.
stop to it because it's like, whatever. People could probably couldn't prove. I don't know. It's
It's a
scary.
free for all. And then you have the kids on the other hand who are saying like if you go against their culture, you're a bigot. You're an actual bigot for hating and you hate their culture just because you would critique it in some way, for
Yeah.
example. Like especially when you're talking about like there's always kind of this gap between what's
Mm.
acceptable to an older generation, what's acceptable to a younger generation.
Yeah.
But for example, like violent pornography, like, when you grow up in that world as the younger kids have, and they see it as so ingrained in their own culture, then you have this massive cultural rift, where then
Yeah.
it's so easy
Yeah.
for the children to look at the adults and be like, you live in the old world. You're just a bigot. You live in the old world. Yeah. And like,
Yeah.
you're right. It's like grooming because you
Mm.
become accustomed to how life is, you think life is, and not even understanding like if you had grown up in a world without it, the difference
Yes.
in health that you might
Huge.
experience. Yeah.
Huge. Social media, the internet is not real life, and I think
Mhm.
even I forget that. Ew, it's so bad, especially when you're young and you're trying, or you're coming into this world and trying to understand everything, and you look at, because I've hung out with my nieces and nephews recently, and one of them uses Instagram, and I'm like, oh God, no,
Yeah.
not
They
good. Like,
got you.
well,
Yeah.
she's not allowed to use like TikTok, or I think her account is private. I don't know. I'm like, it doesn't matter because it's just gonna seep in there. She can use YouTube, and I'm like, oh God, I don't know where I was going with that. Um, I
But
don't
yeah,
remember.
the youth are lost, you know, they
Well, I just don't think they're able to realize and really be able to really grasp that that is not real life, because
right.
you haven't grown up and gone through a lot of life stuff yet, which is why no kid should be able to be like, oh, I need hormone blockers or otherwise I'm gonna die. I'm like, what? You don't
Right.
what? No. Oh
Right.
God, I just
And honestly, that imbalance of maturity where it's like
yeah,
kids are making these super mature decisions, but
yeah,
they're not actually held to a standard of maturity. Like they're not expected to have calm dialogue with each other. They're not
that's a great
expected,
point.
you know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah,
yeah, there's this duality there where we need to almost assess the level of maturity that each person at each age should be expected to be.
isn't that funny how we're able to look at this and just question it?
Yeah.
Not even be like, this is terrible. I mean, obviously is terrible, but we've, you and I and obviously other people have been able to question it and be like, well, that isn't why are we going to allow them to do this? Be
Hmm.
the doctor essentially, but they also can't even talk about politics, or not politics, but can't even talk about whatever adult topic or
Right.
speak. It's
It's like, yeah, there's a cognitive dissonance there of like what children are doing, how the role that they play in society. And it's almost like an overcorrection because
mm-hmm,
like a long time ago, I know when my mom was growing up, her generation felt like, oh, the kids kind of shut up and go to school. You
mm,
know, so and like kids don't play a part in society, kids don't play a
hmm,
part in politics. And I think there's this general idea of that's what I was saying. It's almost like we have to reassess what maturity is because there
mm-hmm,
just used to be this idea where kids should have no say. And I don't agree with that either. And that's almost
mm-hmm.
where this overcorrective rebellion is coming from of, well, we can be whoever we want. You're just a bigot if you disagree with us. And there just needs to be some nuance there because just
Mm-hmm.
stripping power straight away of like, well, you can't have transgenderism, you can't have your identity. I don't think that's going to work either
No.
because I think this identity plays a very specific and important role for kids, you know, and so it's almost a maturity problem, you know,
Yeah.
of like who gets what when can we decide things, when do we know things, like how do we develop into mature adults to know, okay, this is the right time for you to make a mature decision, you know, or like to make a life-changing decision like going
Yeah.
on hormones or something like that.
Yeah. Plus, I honestly think, because it's like, well, how can these parents be doing this, or don't they see what's going on? And I think it's obviously multiple things. I really think it's just the fucking propaganda that's been so insanely successful to where
Mm-hmm.
it's reprogrammed, or programmed parents' minds into thinking that this is real, and whatever the
Right.
kid says is definite, and the whole affirmative model thing. And it's really taught society to erase critical thinking and to think and
Mm-hmm.
question and be skeptical, and remember that you're a caring parent and be like, well, is this really the best thing? Because the effing, it's so stupid. It's
Yeah.
ridiculous. I'm like, these,
No, there's so much emotional manipulation that goes into
God,
it.
yes,
You know,
emotional
that's the
blackmail.
barrier.
If you don't give me the
Mhm.
hormones, I'm gonna kill myself. I'm like,
Mhm.
what? Like, that is,
Yeah.
I've said this before. It's so bad.
Mhm.
That's teaching kids that, like, and parents, like, that it's real, and it's going to cause like a suicide epidemic. I'm gonna have to
Yeah.
assume, because they're gonna be like, well, shit, I didn't get because it really is programming everyone how to think. And if the
Mhm.
kid's like, oh my God, I'm not getting this, well, I've heard that people kill themselves, I'm gonna be more inclined to kill myself because I've heard
Right.
everyone else is doing it.
Yeah, and that's absolutely correct. Actually, suicide is a social contagion, which is why there are actually journalistic regulations on how to report
Hmm.
suicide. And now that you were
Interesting.
even talking about suicide, we should mention, you know, if anybody listening to this feels suicidal, they should reach out to a suicide hotline. You can just Google it because there are very specific ways that journalists need to discuss suicide because it's contagious, and you can see it in the numbers. If it's reported one way, it'll cause a sort of domino effect of, and it's the same thing. And, you know, that's actually really rife in this community too, which is where the emotional manipulation comes from, because it's just in the professional community, it's understood that you're not supposed to talk about suicide that way. For example, they talk about suicide as an out. Like you said, like, well, if I can't get this thing, then how do you escape your body? That's how you know what I mean? So to be talking about it that way without understanding those journalistic standards it's something that there's a lot of emotional manipulation. And that's why, again, it's like, it's easy to see that as evil. And I just don't think it's evil, right? It's like, oh, they're going to hurt themselves, help them. And so that's empathy to me. You know, it's misusing empathy, but it's empathy. And so I feel the same way, where it's like, how could parents do this? But I do think as a movement, we need to take a step back and almost ask that seriously. Like, how could parents do this? Like, they're kind of willfully harming their children. Like, we need to understand why. And they really think that they're helping. That's the scary part. You know, that's the Orwellian part.
Yeah. It's just what they spit out on social media, what the kids learn, what the parents hear from. I mean, it's sunken its claws into everything. Law, you know, doctors, I believe the DSM, psychological journal thing, whatever it's called, schools. I mean, everything, your whole community. Kitty! What's the whole community? Yeah, what's the kitty's name?
This is Edie.
Edie! Oh, Wolfie. You have two kitties? Is that the one that clamored or knocked over, or it sounded like knocked over dishes?
They were chasing Edie and Chicken. They're chasing each other.
So cute. That's adorable. The suicide hotline number, I love how I just like spouted into that because I wanted to pull it up.
There you go.
Says crisis text line. Text home to 741-741. National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, 1-800-273-8255. Yeah. Huh. I don't even know if
and you're supposed to mention too that like your family would miss you, and it's never a way out. And those are the kind of things that they're always forgotten when transgender media comes out. It's just that word is mentioned without the sort of journalistic standard of helping people. That's really what the journalistic standard is there for.
You mean like in journalism? Is that what I'm understanding? Like when you write about it? So what are the rules about, I guess, writing about it? I know you touched on that briefly, but specifically, if you can discuss it.
Right. So as I just mentioned, so it depends on how you frame the act itself. So like, this was something that they'd studied. You can look up when Kurt Cobain had passed, how they were.
Question. Are these like journalists that went through a certain schooling, or are these like journalists with integrity? Is this, do you know what I mean? Like how enforced is this, and who learned this writing style? I guess that's my question.
So I would have to look into the specifics of who. I don't think anybody actually enforces the standards. It's more of a professional understanding within the journalistic community that certain things need to be written on a certain way. And so it's just that there's a lot of research that's been done about suicide in the media. So yeah, for example, like how you frame it, if you frame, this is why I think the connection to transgenderism is so strong. If you frame suicide as a way out of your problems, then you're way more likely to initiate a domino effect. Whereas if you explain suicide as an answer, a permanent answer to a impermanent problem, right? Is that how they say it? Yeah. So like framing it as, for example, how impactful it'll be on your family, rather than framing it as leaving your suffering, is a very important, like, there's something mental, there's something emotional that happens in humans when they view it that way. And so actually this ended up happening with, did you hear 13 Reasons Why?
Oof, not a fan. Fucking terrible.
Right.
I feel like that was like, oh, that could have been some sort of propaganda. Apparently the co-owner of Netflix is the uncle or nephew or something of, I can't believe I'm forgetting his name. Not Foucault. I don't know why I keep thinking that. The guy, the father of propaganda. I was like, oh, of course it is. Like,
interesting.
Also, that show You was all about a stalker. I keep thinking about that for some reason, of it just being like normalized, like stalking and just creepy shit. Sorry, go ahead about the Reasons Why.
That's exactly it, because there's a difference. A lot of people just want to talk about having freedom of speech, and I also believe in freedom of speech, but we have psychological studies to show that what different what different speech does to affect people. So that's why
Yeah.
I don't think it's enforced because, freedom of speech is very strict in this country.
Hmm.
But there is like sort of just a journalistic understanding that it's like it's sort of shunned in the professional community that you would ignore certain standards,
Hmm. Hmm.
because that's the same thing happened with 13 Reasons Why, where they were dealing with one of their main characters had committed suicide, and the way that they framed it was dangerous, essentially.
Hmm.
And so, like,
You really
sure,
think that
we
was accidental? I have a question. Do you think that was accidental?
the thing is, it's hard to see it as accidental because
Hmm.
in the media community, it's so well understood that suicide is contagious, especially among teenagers. It's especially contagious among teenagers. So it's like, it's hard to assume, like, I always think I'm kind of like, I'm nobody. So if I'm nobody, then like industry professionals probably know that. As if you're an industry professional and you're making this big budget Netflix, you have tons of people working on your team. It just, it's hard for me to imagine that somebody didn't know.
Oh, I
So,
don't think it's they didn't know. I think that, well, skeptical mind, but honestly,
right. Of what the intention was. Yeah.
yes. I'm like, I don't.
Yeah. Well,
Who runs
they
these fucking
responded to the
shows?
backlash and they
Mm.
like reworked the whole ending because
Yeah,
of
but I think that that's what most things or movie, any like entertainment industry or anything, where they'll like skate along, like, can we get away with this? You can get away. Oh shit, they didn't
yeah.
like that. Oops,
Yeah.
sorry. You want to know why I know that for a fact? I came from the gaming industry, and there was a whole gaming Me Too thing. God, what year is that? 2 years ago. I was personally affected by it. Ubisoft, fuck you. You harvest rapists and you protect rapists. You should be ashamed of your fucking self. You knew what you were doing. Don't play dumb. Because I saw how they treated me and other people. It was really dirty, I've got to say. There was this Discord group for the Ubisoft star players. Star players makes you feel special, to basically where you're already a content creator for Ubisoft games, and when they give you the star player status, they make you feel like a star. And I personally know and believe that it makes the gamers who are already awkward, and it's basically love bombing. So it feels like I and others owe them to be like, oh, now I really have to do content creating for free for life because you gave me something so special. Anyway, we had our own Discord group, and there was these two fucking trolls, and weirdly enough, like one of the guys who was a star player previous years back for the crew, dumbass game, ugh. Anyways, he ran that Discord, but he's not been a Ubisoft employee. I'm like, why hasn't the ownership of this Discord been given over to an actual employee? Like they just, I don't know, whatever. So me and other women were talking about like our trauma or just questioning what the whole star player program was, because the amount of star players, I'm just going to throw out a number, I think it was like 30. When I was a star player, there was an overwhelming, a majority of women that were chosen. And I'm like, so in the gaming industry that is dominated by males, I'm supposed to sit here and believe that this is not a fucking conspiracy to bring young girls who look up to the programmers, employees, a lot. This is E3. This is a serious convention. I think it's one of the biggest in the world, where people come from all around the world that have made these games, and they have these fucking young people looking up to these people that work for Ubisoft, and they just pick them out of a fucking pond to rape, groom. I mean, it happened to me. I know what happens to other people. I've had other women come forward and tell me about their fucking experience. It's a thing. I mean,
Yeah.
this is not shocking in any sense of the form. I guess I was very naive, but it's just a male dominated culture. But back to the Discord thing. So me and other women were just talking about it, and it was a very, very sensitive topic. We are actual victims of this shit. And the guy that ran that Discord, who used to be a previous star player, was like laughing at us, mocking us. And I mean, right now I'm getting so nervous talking about it. I was like, I know for a fact there's a woman and there's a man, Alan and Lily something, I don't know, Lily Pond, whatever. They were there. They saw that happen. They did nothing. You want to know what they did? They told me to calm down.
Oof.
Me. I
Yeah.
was like, I mean, I couldn't. I really had that moment of, oh my god, I'm not protected. The
Right.
males are being protected. It was just shattering.
Yeah.
I saw, and that was just one fucking example of Ubisoft protecting men. Oh, it was so awful. It was so awful. Like, I have no words. Like that was I was very fresh on like telling my story because it started with one woman who had been raped by this guy, Esco Blades, whatever, African American dude, who had a huge online presence. People like loved him. One of those crazy, insane narcissists where people like fawn over him for I don't even know why. It's crazy. He raped a girl, and she told her story, and it caused this crazy ripple effect. And I read her story, and all of these stories are almost fucking identical. Conventions, a lot of alcohol, free alcohol, open bar, party fest, a lot of men,
And
extremely
like you
crazy.
said,
Yeah,
taking
go ahead.
advantage of people wanting to be in the middle of something and be involved and be in an organization, be special, be,
Oh yeah,
like that's why
oh
they
yeah,
praise you. That's why, and it's the same thing with transgenderism. All of these
hmm,
different spaces have something that's so common, and like
yeah,
being able to see that is so important. Yeah, like you said, the stories are similar.
oh yeah.
So we just need
Largely,
to sit down and figure out all these
listen to the
patterns.
stories. That's why, I
Yeah.
would like to get to a point where I interview D sisters or D trans people because those are, man, I started my research, I believe, in November of all this. And I'm always like, okay, if you want to call me a bigot, a transphobe, whatever, don't listen to me then. Please listen to the D trans
Mhm.
generation because their stories are so raw, so real, and they really give you that inside perspective of holy shit, and you really understand the grooming and the extremely
Yeah.
inappropriate sexual nature of like everything of men pretending to be women, grooming young girls that are pretending or think they're men. It's
Mhm.
really
Mhm.
devious and insidious and demonic and just fuck, it's so awful. And all of this
Yeah.
abuse is so normalized. It's so
Mhm.
normal. Time and again,
Mhm.
and I guess I'm glad I didn't live through that, but I'm horrified seeing it now with young people who don't know any better. They're being told that talking about sex to some stranger online is okay and it's
Right.
healthy. It's
Right.
this is
And your
what I'm saying.
genitals. I mean, the entire movement is like obsessed with talking about
And they try to say that we're
genitals.
obsessed with it. I'm like,
Right.
everything they say is what they do. I'm so over that. I'm like,
Right.
okay.
It's a projection.
Hmm.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how did you get involved in this, transgender ridiculous takeover?
Mhm. So yeah, I was going to mention that too because you said like pointing people towards detransitioners because
Hmm.
so many people in this community say we can't like understand it without listening to someone who's experienced it. So that's actually like sort of my origin story where I found out about this when Bruce Jenner like came
Oh
out
yeah.
publicly,
Hmm.
and that was the first time I'd truly like questioned it, and I started reading stuff and I started becoming critical. But
Hmm.
I also realized that I experienced, like I said, I was a tomboy, but I had so many moments in my youth where I was like, was I born wrong? Or, like, especially before you hit puberty and your bodies are so similar to boys' bodies that,
Yeah, I have a question. Was it mostly exterior how you looked, but it wasn't how you thought, right? I'm just want
no, it was
confirm.
both for
Oh,
me.
really?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
can
Well,
you go into that?
because, yeah. So I really think it was like we've been talking about a social inclusion thing because,
Hmm.
so I'm, you know, was, sorry, my cats.
Oh, that's normal.
Yeah.
That's perfect.
So yeah, I was athletic when I was young and I cut my hair short. And it's just like whenever we were doing stuff as kids, we would kind of split up between boys and
Hmm.
girls, and the boys did athletic things. So I think
Hmm.
that's why I tended towards hanging out with all the boys. And it was both, it was like, I remember
Hmm.
like for example, before puberty, like my chest was the same as boys' chest. So I didn't really understand why girls had to cover their chests up.
Hmm.
Like that was something I remember confusing me a lot when I was a kid, or like having dreams where I was at the beach without my shirt on and like feeling really uncomfortable, but then thinking, well, boys don't have their shirt
Hmm.
on,
Hmm.
So like that
Hmm.
kind of confusion, but the social confusion too of like whenever you're in athletic spaces, when you're a girl, it's very like if you're good at it, then you're good for a girl. And if you're
Hmm.
bad at it, then it's like, oh, you're the girl, so you're not good at it.
Yeah.
So it was very like, I don't want this to be a thing. And so when you're like in those athletic spaces, you really want to just
Hmm.
participate. And it's like, you don't want people looking at you, but when you're the only girl, I think that played a big role
Interesting.
for me. Yeah.
Yeah. So at school they would separate like, or are you saying that when you would do like recreational sports during school or maybe after school, that the men would go or the boys would go play their sports and then you would join them? It was basically only you.
Yeah, so it was like organic, honestly, like throughout my whole life, like whenever we were like having a day out or going to the beach or going to the park, it was like the boys would play soccer and the girls would I mean, I don't know what the girls would do because I didn't hang out with them,
Yeah.
like I would always go play the sport, and so it was just organic in my circles. And, maybe it would have been less confusing if there was girls who wanted to play sports too, but I
Yeah.
was the
It
only
sounds like
one.
nobody held you back as well, and they were okay with it, whether it was your parents or the teachers or whatever. They weren't like, "Oh no, you can't," or whatever, which is, I think, awesome. And I just think that really, I guess, goes to show how that's, I guess, bred into males and females about male things and female things that girls don't play soccer or whatever.
Hmm.
For where I would think that a lot of girls are just are taught from early age Barbies and all that shit. Where if you were to, at least in my family, like I know I was raised like that, and I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing, but I also don't think it's I can't say that it's great that well, I know for a fact my mom would be like, "You're not doing that." Like I know for a fact,
Oh
because she
no.
basically chose like I don't know. I hate saying that, but
That's how
whatever.
it
Parents
was.
always live
Yeah.
through kids.
Yeah.
Because I wound up liking cheerleading, but I also realized I was like, but she made me do that. I didn't want to do it. Like I was crying.
Hmm. Yeah.
I was like, but it's just one of those things where, well, I don't know what I was saying actually, honestly.
No, it's a very strong social idea,
Yeah.
and that's where the resistance from the other side comes from, where even though you're right, like my mom was like that because I think it's because my mom experienced that as well, where she was kind
Mm.
of tomboyish and
Hmm.
athletic too.
Interesting.
And she always cut her hair really short, which is like,
Mm.
like people always used to call me a dyke. I remember and I
Really?
remember
Oh my
being,
God. How old?
yeah, in third grade, in
Oh,
third
that's
grade.
terrible.
I mean, and it's like,
Jesus.
obviously, I didn't want to be made fun of. So that's
Of
where the
course not.
confusion came from, where it's like, well, why
Yeah.
can't I have short hair? Yeah.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. That's so
Mm-hmm.
sad. Fuck.
Mm-hmm. But I was
Jeez.
lucky I had a mom that told me, like, no, it's fine. Like,
Yeah, that's great.
but it's still something I had to experience socially, and it
Right.
hits you really hard because
Of
you don't,
course. You're so
when you're
confused,
a
I'm
kid,
sure.
yeah, you're so naive. You're like, I want to play soccer. I want to cut my hair,
Why
and then
not?
it's like all of this attention focused on you, it's
Yeah, and you're like,
difficult.
why is everyone looking? I'm just doing what I want to do. You're doing it
Right.
too. I want to do it too. What's the
Right.
problem?
You don't even
Uh,
think twice about it. There's this naivety, and this like
yeah.
beautiful innocence that just gets shattered because
I
of these
know, I
social
know.
demarcations. Yeah.
Yes, it's so true. Gender is
Yeah.
social construct. Someone tried to say that it wasn't, and I was like, I don't know. I don't know. This shit's confusing sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so I guess I probably got you off track about well, not
No, it's
really
okay. Yeah,
super
we
off
were
track.
kind of going over like how I got into
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh,
and that's the
the
same.
Bruce Jenner thing.
Hmm. Oh yeah, the Bruce Jenner thing. So it really occurred to me as I was going through the Bruce Jenner thing and like studying it and stuff that I was like, wait, I went through this.
Oh
Like
wow.
I experienced this, and it's just like it wasn't called being trans then. It was called being a
Mm,
tomboy.
right.
And nobody medicalized you and nobody thought you really were a boy. It was just
No.
like
He was like,
an
you want to do that?
athletic
All right.
girl.
Yeah.
Right.
Hmm.
So, and that's really like the more I spoke out about the whole gender issue, the more people encouraged me to because of this phenomenon that like apparently you can't say anything unless you've experienced it. And I
Mm,
experienced it. So
yeah.
people were like, you need to speak up more. You need, because of that
Yes.
fear too, that people are just like, that's it. You're a bigot if you disagree. You're just a
Well,
bigot.
that's
And
on
so,
purpose. That's to keep you in fear and to go along with their rhetoric and repeat what they say.
right.
And it's honestly to
Emotional
keep,
manipulation.
yeah, it's to keep you silent. It's to keep you from critically thinking. It's to keep you from talking to exposing the truth. It's to keep from exposing the truth of fucking reality.
Yeah.
Of
The
course, they
boring
silence
truth
you. I don't think it's boring. I think reality is fascinating and
is
wonderful
it?
and very complicated and nuanced
Yeah.
and different and problematic and everything.
You're totally right. I just always think like we explain the birds and the bees. That's what we do. It's like the most basic
I know. I had
thing.
to go back when I first started this. I was like, wait, what is the difference between
Yeah.
gender and sex? And that's why I bought older dictionaries from 1995 and the
There you
first
go.
dictionary ever from 18 whatever, which, my God, their definition of female or woman is not great.
Oh,
Not great. But I
interesting.
was like, obviously, it's from the 1800s. Let me get that
Yeah.
puppy out. Oh Jesus, there goes half the shelf. Not really. Okay, I have tabs, so let's see. Okay, this is from 1828. I love this thing. Yeah, I've
I
literally had
love
to go
old
back to
books.
I know. Well, this isn't old. It's they've actually reprinted this thing. It's on Amazon. Oh, look, it's green. You can't. But
Oh,
it's the
that's funny.
original. It's the original book from 1828. Let's see. Back here somewhere. So this is woman. Blah 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 blah. Da, da, da. God, I'm not gonna. Okay, well I'll say it. Fuck it, because I was like, I can't say this. It's gonna give the transgender people more fuel for their fire. Whatever. The plural as written seems to be womb dash men, but we pronounce it. This is weird. Well, no, it's not weird. I get it. WIMEN, women, and so it ought to be written, for it is from the Saxon with man, comma wife man. I don't even know. I haven't gotten to the part yet. The female of the human race, grown to adult years. Blah blah blah. Women are soft, mild, pitiful, and flexible.
Well, they are pretty flexible though, like compared to men, I think, yes.
It's true. That's great. Oh my God. We see everyday women perish with infamy by having been too willing to set their beauty to show. It gives like examples of, I guess, writers, and it says rambler. I guess that's a writer. It's just, I guess it's not a definition, it's examples. I have observed among all nations that the women ornament themselves more than the men. That wherever found, they are the same kind, civil, obliging, humane, tender beings, inclined to be gay and cheerful, timorous and modest. I know. Yep. Let's see. I think that was it. But let's see what was female. Curious now that we're have the book open.
It's very interesting.
I know. What? Oh, this page maybe? Female is, well, let's see. Woman, see feminine. Among animals, one of the sex which conceives and brings forth young. Motherfucker. Exactly. I love that I just said motherfucker. Wow, how appropriate. Inappropriate. God. Well, it talks about plant stuff, obviously. Noting the sex which produces young, not male, as a female. I don't know, it gives an example as a female bee. It was much less notorious than I thought it'd be. The sex which produces young, not male.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Pretty
simple.
Yeah, anyway. Yeah, that's what I was... Yeah, having to basically go back to my own school and be like, okay, what the fuck are the differences? Yeah, we really are teaching birds and bees type stuff. And, well, our logic on that is considered like grandma, uncool, outdated. It's not the modern science or whatever.
The Western colonialist...
Oh, is that what they say? Oh my God.
Yeah, they say that like,
oh my God.
Yeah, biology is like an oppressive structure created by like Western colonialism, and that's the binary is an oppressive idea of this sort of like rigid Western objectivism where it's like we can know things, and I guess like non-Western people can't know things. That's kind of how
it's like the queer theory stuff. God, all that's so dangerous. And like a lot of it is I get it, and I'm like, yeah, that does sound like I get it. Like I can see why they think it'd be oppressive or whatever you said, constrictive or something. God, it's
well, that's the thing.
It's so
is
not
like
true though. It's like you don't have to make your fantasy what you want to be, like a real thing where you mutilate your body.
Right. Being able to find the nuance is the most important thing because, so for example, like one of the first like true waves of science was structuralism. And that's sort of like what postmodernism seeks to eradicate is this basic idea that like, I guess using science, you can understand reality. That's like what structuralism was. But the first wave after structuralism was post-structuralism, and that included feminism and feminist perspectives. And so they didn't at that point basically say that you couldn't find an objective reality. What they said was that trying to find an objective reality is structural in nature. So I'll give you an example. During structuralism, there were men who studied I think they were like chimps or some sort of like chimpanzee.
Mm-mm.
And they had a very difficult time attributing behavior to female chimpanzees because of their structuralist perspective as a male. And so post-structuralism was about, okay, there are different types of objective reality, but it's almost as if like different people can observe them differently. So when you had female scientists observing the same chimpanzees, it was easier for them to attribute certain kinds of behavior to female chimpanzees that men had a difficult time doing. But you'll note that that's not an exercise in throwing out objective reality, which is what postmodernism does, which is why I'm more of a fan of post-structuralism, which is like, okay, there is an objective reality. We have to be very careful to the lens that we use and the way that we're viewing it and the assumptions that we're making. And quite frankly, being able to expand it to different viewpoints and test those viewpoints. Because there is something wrong with the notion that we could just know things, or that like we know that, for example, like in scientific understanding, like we've made a lot of mistakes and we've made a lot of but it's in service of something greater. And so being able to see that like not everybody gets it right the first time, and we all have a limited lens, and being able to articulate what the lens is really important. And where it gets dangerous in transgenderism and postmodernism is where they throw out objective reality. It's like we can make up reality. Yeah,
While
it's
the
like
rest of us are living in reality. Like, how is that going to work exactly?
yeah,
And unless you convince everyone of this fantasy
yeah.
reality, I guess.
And reality will smack you in the face, because you can think that you're the opposite sex all you want, but 10 years down the line, when you're really sick, reality will catch up to you. And so,
Yep, that's usually when the desisting and regretting starts, where what I've heard time and again is they chop off a body part that they were obsessing over and so much anger. I'm
yeah,
like, when they have anger and they hate it, I'm like, that's trauma. I think I
yeah,
personally believe that's freaking trauma. And there's nothing wrong with
right.
that. There's nothing wrong with having trauma. This is what I always want to reiterate. And I think it's interesting that you came to all this, I guess, because you had your own personal story that you're like, oh, I know what this is. So then I'm going to have to assume that you started doing research and just, immediately became a part of it because of your own history. And that was also my ordeal. I was the youngest of my whole family. I always felt like I was casted out or the black sheep or thrown under the bus, ignored, where I wanted to, I rebelled and I wanted to do my own thing. And I had anorexia for 6 years, and the parallels with that are crazy big. So that's also why I'm so emotional about it, because I've been there. Like, I mean, of course, it's not been the gender or the sex thing, whatever. But the parallels are, you cannot ignore them. They're incredibly similar, and people always say that it's, this whole trans thing is a new anorexia eating disorder thing, because they are so similar and they are so insanely body obsessed. And going
I
back
was
to what
going
I
to say
said,
body obsession and like the way you look obsession, having that dysmorphia of not
oh
being
yeah,
able to see yourself
oh yeah.
clearly.
Yeah,
There's
that shit is
so many.
real, and I had that, and I feel like honestly, I feel like I definitely still have it. It's one of those things that this shit is so psychological and so deeply embedded in, like, to really truly escape it. I don't know about that. I spent 6 years of that shit, and I really believe the more time you spend in it and the more, I found like my own online family where I didn't talk to my family. I was like, my family sucks. And thank God there wasn't this like grooming culture of like, oh, does your family hate you? Come join the glitter club and be yourself. I'm so thankful that that wasn't a thing. And I
Yeah.
only had my online anorexia forum club. That wasn't a club. It was just a select few, a lot of all females, funny enough, all fucking females. It's been, this whole thing has been talked about with the whole female spread with the youth, that it's even more of a, I believe, social contagion with young women or young girls, the whole like hysteria. There was like this dancing social contagion from like I think the 1800s where they like danced and fainted. Like it was mostly women. So God, that was a whole tangent.
Yeah. No, and that's true according to the statistics. Like if you look at gender clinics, it used to be majority boys and now it's
Yeah.
majority girls. So that's
And no
true.
one's questioning that of how, if you look at the charts, like of course I don't know, I just feel like, well, everything's
There
being
are obvious
silenced.
patterns. Yeah.
Yeah. I just think that that shit's being silenced, removed, not published. So many of these studies, like the Tavistock stuff, was published like I don't know if it was published a year later or whatnot. it's just the truth is being hidden from every angle. And that
Yeah.
includes me, my existence, or what I have to say about it. And I'm sure you, I don't know if you've had any personal experience of being silenced or deplatformed, or I'm sure it may be in person. Have you had any of that? Mind me
I've definitely
asking.
been targeted online. It's more by individuals,
Mm-hmm.
like death threats and violent threats. And I've had people contacting my different employers over the years. But luckily, I just set myself in a situation, like in the position where it wouldn't matter. But I know that a lot of people don't have that, so I think I've
Yeah.
just been lucky. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, same
Hmm.
here. Yeah, oh, lordy.
Yep.
Yeah, so how did you hear about the Women Pick a DC thing?
Oh, so I was friends with the director, Courtney, just like in passing. We'd spoken a few times. We'd supported each other's work because she was kind of a doula and she went through that whole situation that happened with her community. And I just like to be in contact with random people who are working on this topic. Like,
Mm-hmm.
especially like I said, I'm very against that idea of like purity politics. So I just try to make connections with anybody that I can on different topics. And I'm also the kind of person where I really appreciate disagreement. So
Yeah.
I like working with nonpartisan groups where I just feel like there's so much different strength that goes into it when it comes to like you're saying, like this whole like we're all going to be the same. Welcome to the glitter club, of just like everyone's the same and
Glitter
everyone that kind
family.
of freaks me out. Yeah,
Because your real
that kind
family
of
doesn't,
freaks
yeah.
me out.
It's not
Yeah,
okay.
so
It's intentionally divisive and separates you
hmm
from actual protection. They
yeah,
manipulate reality. This whole thing is manipulating reality 100%
yeah,
through and through. Lies, lies,
yeah.
lies, 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 lies,
hmm
lies.
hmm And that's where it's like if we're really going to have all these political problems where we can't really understand what the truth is, then it's almost like this is one of the most important topics because we need to start from the base bottom. This is like fifth grade stuff.
Yeah.
So just like working our way up from there, I do like participating in nonpartisan coalitions and just like retaining myself as like an independent journalist. So yeah, just like if anybody's working on any individual projects, I love to work as a consultant. So anybody could reach out to me as a consultant.
Yeah.
Um,
Awesome.
so I have a Facebook. You could find me on Facebook, Charlie Ray. I have like a personal one, and I also have like a journalist page. So either of those could be contacted. I also have a YouTube.
Oh,
I should get back into doing YouTube. I
yes, you
started
should.
something.
Look, you already have this set up. You're able to do it.
Yeah.
Go.
I started doing something called social justice cults, and I was like kind
Mm,
of getting into
nice.
YouTube. But then the pandemic hit, and my
Mm,
life seriously altered. So that's
mm,
sort of why I put that on the back burner.
mm-hmm.
But people could go there and potentially reach out to me. Yeah, and I'm a
What's your
writer in
YouTube?
general. So just Charlie Ray.
Okay. How do you spell? Well, Charlie and then RAE, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Cool.
Cool.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, if there's anything else you want to talk about, you can honestly go for it. I don't want to
Yeah,
keep you fixated.
definitely. Yeah. I guess my most important message to people, yeah, is like taking the time to understand what you're up against, taking the time to understand the world around you. Like we
Or whatever
said,
you're supporting. Yeah.
yeah, the nuances of objective reality, the nuances of what's happening. Um, Especially when I look at how people treat each other. Like I said, I hate that our side kind of paints the other side as hateful
Mm-hmm.
and as misogynistic because I agree that transgenderism is misogynistic as a concept, as an ideology, but I really think that most people they mean well.
Yeah,
And
they
I
don't. Yeah, they
it's
don't
not that
realize they.
everyone means
Yeah,
well, hmm
I
but a
know.
lot of people do. It's but like these kids that they just want to
Mm-hmm.
fit in, and the parents who
Yeah.
just want their kids to be safe and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, trying to see everything that we're doing from a very human perspective, I think is my message.
That's a wonderful message. I love that. That's fantastic. It really uh, brings it down to a living reality where whatever the sex, no sex, no gender. Let's just bring it, human. You need to
Hmm.
respect me, and I'll respect you, and we'll respect each
Hmm.
other. And if you can
Hmm.
listen to me, I will absolutely listen to you. And also another thing where there's been this crazy disconnect of no conversation, Yeah, it's unfortunate because it is. I do definitely certainly think that they've been captured by the cult-like mindset of, and they don't see it for what it is yet, I guess, and it really is unfortunate. I totally agree with what you're saying.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being on. I'm so happy, and this was your first interview, like
Yes.
ever.
Yeah, my first video interview. Yeah.
Well, it's been an honor. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thank you for
So,
having me.
yeah,
And it was great to meet you in DC. I think you're awesome. Like you have so many skills. It was great to meet you. I love
you too.
you.
Yep, I
Yeah.
love you too. Stop it. Oh my God. Well, until
Yeah.
next time, party people.
Great.
Bye.